In a single momentous decision, the United States Supreme Court has redrawn the map of global trade. Today, August 11, 2025, the court overturned the sweeping tariffs enacted by President Donald Trump under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This ruling is a seismic event, shaking the foundations of international commerce and redefining the limits of presidential authority. The president's use of IEEPA to impose a blanket 10% tariff on most imports was championed as a defense of American interests. But for many, it triggered economic turmoil and uncertainty. The Supreme Court's decision answers a fundamental question: who controls the power of the purse in international trade, Congress or the president? The court has now drawn a clear line, reasserting Congress's constitutional authority and signaling a return to a more predictable, rules-based order. As the dust settles, the world watches to see if this judicial check ushers in a new era of cooperation or a different kind of conflict. To understand today's ruling, we must look back at how it all began. In his second term, President Trump escalated trade conflicts, wielding IEEPA, a law meant for emergencies, to impose a universal 10% tariff on nearly all imports. The administration justified these sweeping actions by citing trade deficits as threats to national security, and even targeted allies and rivals alike with steep new duties. Legal challenges erupted almost immediately, with businesses and state attorneys general arguing that IEEPA was never meant to rewrite the entire U.S. tariff code. The fight began in the U.S. Court of International Trade, which ruled against the administration, only for a federal appeals court to temporarily reinstate the tariffs. The legal battle intensified, culminating in a decisive loss for the administration at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. This set the stage for a final showdown at the Supreme Court, where the core question was whether a president could use emergency powers to bypass Congress on trade. The answer, as we now know, is no. The court's decision marks a dramatic end to a year of legal and economic turmoil. The president's power play has been checked, and the constitutional balance restored. The implications for future presidents, and for the separation of powers, are profound. America's approach to trade will never be the same. At the heart of this dispute is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. IEEPA allows the president to regulate economic transactions during a national emergency, but never explicitly mentions tariffs. Challengers argued that if Congress intended to give the president power to set taxes on imports, it would have said so. The administration claimed that the power to embargo trade included the power to impose tariffs, citing old precedents. This case forced the Supreme Court to confront two key doctrines: non-delegation, which limits Congress's ability to hand over its core powers, and the major questions doctrine, which demands clear congressional authorization for decisions of vast economic significance. The challengers insisted that allowing the president to define any economic issue as an emergency would cede Congress's entire trade authority. The legal journey was about more than tariffs. It was about the structural integrity of American government. Would the court allow a permanent expansion of presidential power, or reaffirm the traditional separation of powers? The stakes were enormous, with the potential to reshape how America responds to crises for generations. The court's answer would define the limits of executive power in economic policy. The nation held its breath as the Supreme Court released its decision in VOS Selections v. Trump. In a 6-3 ruling, the court declared that IEEPA does not grant the president authority to impose broad-based tariffs. The majority opinion emphasized that the power to tax and regulate foreign commerce belongs to Congress, not the executive. The absence of the word tariff in IEEPA was critical. Imposing taxes is a legislative act, not a regulatory one. The court rejected the argument that the power to embargo includes the power to tariff, drawing a sharp distinction between foreign policy tools and fiscal policy. Invoking the major questions doctrine, the justices insisted that only Congress can authorize such sweeping economic measures. The ruling drew a bright line. Emergencies do not justify bypassing Congress on matters of taxation. The dissent warned that the decision could limit the president's flexibility in responding to modern threats, but the majority held firm. The court's message was clear: executive power has limits, especially when it comes to the nation's economic lifeblood. The decision reasserts the constitutional balance at the heart of American democracy. The Supreme Court's decision sent shockwaves through financial markets. U.S. stock futures surged, signaling Wall Street's relief at the return of stability and predictability. Companies reliant on imports, retailers, automakers, tech firms, saw their stock prices jump. For small businesses, the ruling is a lifeline, lifting a heavy burden and offering hope for survival. The removal of tariffs means lower costs for importers and ultimately, for consumers. Americans can expect prices on everyday goods to gradually fall, easing the strain on household budgets. However, not everyone benefits. Domestic industries like steel and aluminum, once shielded by tariffs, now face renewed global competition. Workers in these sectors confront new uncertainty, and policymakers must manage the transition. The challenge ahead is to support vulnerable industries while embracing the benefits of open trade. The economic landscape is shifting, and the nation must adapt. The Supreme Court's ruling is a turning point for both Wall Street and Main Street. The Supreme Court's decision is reverberating around the globe. Stock markets in Asia and Europe are poised for a rally, reflecting relief among America's trading partners. Leaders in Europe, Asia, Canada, and Mexico have welcomed the ruling as a victory for the rules-based international order. For countries like Brazil, the decision offers immediate reprieve from crippling tariffs and a chance to reset relations with Washington. Yet caution remains. President Trump still has other legal tools to impose targeted tariffs, though these require more rigorous justification. The world is reassessing its reliance on the U.S. market, accelerating efforts to diversify supply chains and forge new trade agreements. Even as optimism returns, the lesson is clear. Global trade is more fragile than ever, and nations are hedging against future uncertainty. The Supreme Court's ruling has deepened divisions in Washington. President Trump and his allies denounced the decision as judicial overreach, vowing to fight on. The administration's rhetoric raises the stakes, testing the resilience of American democratic institutions. On Capitol Hill, Democrats and some moderate Republicans hail the ruling as a reassertion of congressional authority. With the president's primary tool for imposing tariffs now gone, Congress faces a new opportunity and challenge to craft a modern trade policy. The political fallout will shape the coming elections and the future of American governance. Legal and economic experts agree. The Supreme Court made the right, if difficult, call. Trade law scholars emphasize that IEEPA was never intended for broad tariffs. The court's decision restores the original meaning of the law and the separation of powers. Economists welcome the end of artificial market distortions, predicting greater stability and growth. The ruling doesn't strip the president of all trade powers. Other laws remain, but with more checks and procedural hurdles. Future trade actions will be more targeted and deliberate, preventing sweeping unilateral moves. The decision sends a powerful message. The executive branch cannot redefine statutes to suit its policy goals. The judiciary's role as a check on executive power is reaffirmed, steering the nation back to constitutional principles. The debate will continue, but the legal and economic consensus is clear. Congress's authority on trade is restored. With the Supreme Court's decision now law, the nation faces a new chapter. Customs officials must unwind the tariffs, and importers will seek billions in refunds, a messy but necessary process. Businesses will shift from crisis management to strategic planning, recalibrating supply chains and pricing. The White House must choose accept the ruling and work with Congress, or seek new ways to pursue its agenda. Congress, invited by the court to reclaim its constitutional role, must decide whether to act or remain gridlocked. The story is about more than tariffs. It's about America's identity and its place in the world. The path forward is uncertain, but the choice now belongs to the American people and their representatives.